What happened last Tuesday defies any normal pattern, and honestly, almost made me call the police before I even had my breakfast. It was one of those gray mornings. I was here editing an old video, completely distracted, when the doorbell rang with unusual insistence, that long ring that puts you on alert. I wasn't expecting anything. I hadn't ordered anything from Amazon. It wasn't my birthday, and I definitely hadn't ordered food at that hour. When I looked through the peephole, I only saw the delivery man's back hurriedly walking away, almost running to the van, leaving something leaning against my door that made my heart skip a beat and my blood run cold instantly. I slowly opened the door, and what I saw there, thrown on my doormat, looked like it had come straight out of a low-budget horror movie or a true crime documentary. It was an enormous object, about 1 meter and 70 centimeters tall, grotesquely wrapped in layer upon layer of thick bubble wrap. But the worst part wasn't the material. It was the color and the shape. The plastic was a dark red, almost burgundy, opaque shade, and the shape? People, I swear to you, it had the exact outline of a human body. You could distinguish what appeared to be the curve of the shoulders, a narrowing where the neck would be, and the width of the hips, all mummified in that reddish material which, under the dim light of the hallway, looked damp. I stood paralyzed in the doorway, looking around to see if it was a prank, but the hallway was empty and silent. Irrational fear took hold of me, because our minds are created when it comes to misfortune in these situations, and I started creating 1,000 conspiracy theories in a matter of seconds. I thought about going back inside, locking everything up, and calling emergency services, but morbid curiosity and the lack of a visible sender made me act recklessly. With trembling hands, I decided to drag it into my apartment, and that's when the panic intensified. The weight. It wasn't light like a doll, but it also wasn't heavy like a real body. It had a dead weight, dense but strangely balanced. I dragged that bizarre red thing to the middle of my living room, the plastic making a creaking noise that sent shivers down my spine, and I stared at the object there on the rug, looking like a crime scene amidst my clean decor. I needed about 10 minutes just walking in circles around that wrapped body, trying to muster the courage to do anything, while my mind went over who could hate me enough to make such a threat. I grabbed the sharpest kitchen scissors I had, feeling like it was a weapon defense, and cautiously approached the head of the package. The smell coming from the package wasn't bad. In fact, it had a slight odor of musk and old wood, which confused my senses. I started cutting the red plastic, which was much thicker than it looked, like industrial insulation, and with each layer I removed, the shape remained rigid, making me realize that, thankfully, it wasn't human flesh, but something hard and structured underneath. As I tore open that terrifying red wrapping, the tension turned into utter confusion, because beneath the bubble wrap was a layer of black velvet fabric, protecting the real object. I hurriedly removed the remaining plastic, my heart still racing, and when I finally removed the black cloth, I fell to the floor, not from fear, but from sheer shock. What looked like a human body, with broad shoulders and a slender waist, was actually a hard musical instrument case, but not just any case. It was an old cello case made of black carbon fiber, all scratched and covered in stickers from international trips that I knew like the back of my hand. That case, I hadn't seen that case in almost 15 years. To give you some context, I need to provide a quick overview. I played the cello throughout my childhood and adolescence. It was my passion, my dream career. But when I was 20, my mother became seriously ill, and we needed money quickly for an experimental treatment that our insurance didn't cover. Without a second thought, I sold my most prized possession, a rare 19th century cello that belonged to my grandfather, to an anonymous collector at a closed auction. It was the saddest day of my life, but it saved my mother. Since then, I've never played again. Music died within me that day. And now that case, with the same Berlin and Vienna stickers I'd put on it myself as a boy, was there in my living room. after having looked like a corpse wrapped in red plastic minutes before. My hands were sweating as I unlocked the case's latches, that click sound echoing like thunder in the silence of the apartment. I slowly lifted the lid, afraid it would be empty or that the instrument was broken. But there it was, the Red Baron. That's what I call the cello because of its unique, deep reddish varnish, which poetically and bizarrely explained why whoever sent it had chosen that dark red bubble wrap to package it. It was intact, polished, with new strings, resting on the blue velvet of its case as if it had fallen asleep yesterday and woken up today. I began to cry copiously, caressing the wood, feeling that physical reunion with a part of my soul that I thought I had amputated forever. It was then that I noticed a cream-colored envelope, made of thick paper, tucked under the instrument's neck. I picked up the letter, expecting to see the name of some distant relative or perhaps that anonymous collector, but the sender left me absolutely speechless. The letter was signed Mr. Elio, the owner of the corner bakery. You know who I'm talking about. I've mentioned him here in the vlogs. He's that grumpy old man who barely says good morning, with whom I argue every week because his dog pees on my tire. I always thought he hated me, but in the letter, written in a trembling hand, he explained everything. He said, "Boy, 15 years ago I was the intermediary at that auction. I saw how you cried when you handed over the instrument. I kept it all this time, taking care of the wood, waiting for the moment when you were more stable in life to return it. The red plastic was my granddaughter's idea to protect it from the sun during transport. Sorry if it scared you." I stood there, motionless, rereading those words and trying to process that the old man I thought was an annoying neighbor was, in fact, the silent guardian of my greatest dream. Mr. Elio wasn't just a bakery owner. The letter revealed that he had been a renowned luthier instrument maker in the past, and that he had bought the cello with his life savings, not to resell it, but to preserve my grandfather's history and my talent, because he used to hear me rehearsing through the window when I was a child. He was ill now and felt it was time for the instrument to return home before he passed away. That package that looked like death, in reality, brought life back into my apartment. I ended the day not editing videos, but sitting on the living room floor, tuning the Barral Vermelho Red Baron. When I played the first note, deep and resonant, I felt as if 15 years of silence had instantly dissolved. The end of this story, folks, is that not only did I get my cello back, but I also learned a lesson in humanity that I'll never forget. I ran to the bakery afterwards, hugged Mr. Elio, who grumbled but accepted the hug, and promised I would play for him every Sunday. Sometimes the scariest packages in life contain the most beautiful gifts, and the people we least expect are the ones who secretly root for us the most. It was a scare of my life, but with the happiest ending I could have dreamed of,